All right, Lombardi Morning Scramble is here. We have a special guest, family friend, Lucas Segal joins the show. Now, he's only 18, but he probably knows his 49ers, his Giants, his Warriors, maybe his Kings. He's not a Kings fan, but he probably knows all that stuff better than most 40-plus-year-olds. So this is Lucas. First of all, welcome to the show. I know you're headed to Georgetown next year. You're already on the East Coast right now. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
But
having
I
me.
have Of course, man. But I have to tell people just to introduce you. Still remember going into your family's house, what, in 2011. So this was 12, 13 years ago. You might have been 6, 7 years old in the summer. It was the summer after the Giants first won the World Series. And I walk in, I never met you before. You're sitting on the floor reading, I believe, the Sporting Green, right? San Francisco Chronicle.
Yep.
And I was like, that was me when I was 6, reading that newspaper. And I guess you haven't stopped.
No, so obviously stuff's moving more and more to video nowadays, but I'm still old fashioned. I like to read when I can to get as much news as possible.
And I mean, you started delving into all this through baseball stats, right? You knew everybody's numbers, but I guess that knowledge is just naturally trickled over into the other Bay Area sports and national level sports too. Not You're not just talking Niners and all that, but uh, to me, I remember you were really just crazed about the numbers of baseball back when we first met when you were 6 or 7.
Yeah, baseball was my first love. I think it was probably easy for that to be the case with the Giants being so successful when I was a really little kid. Um, and then obviously we had the great eras with the Warriors and then two kind of runs with the Niners, and just helped me get into the other two San Francisco sports as well. And as I grew older and had more time to choose how I wanted to spend my time, I just tried to just consume as much information as possible about baseball, football, and basketball with obviously a Bay Area focus. But I just found it super interesting to try to learn about all the different teams and all the different numbers and stats, especially with all the movement that we have in today's sports leagues, where player might be in New York or Carolina one year, and then they'll be in San Francisco the next.
And speaking of that, that was a perfect segue. You're already a professional. This is the news of the day. My article from this morning on The Athletic. Players in Carolina now with San Francisco. Christian McCaffrey glows about his new 49ers teammate, Sam Darnold. Now, this is a connection that technically, I guess, started in the Bay Area. Christian McCaffrey was breaking records at Stanford. Sam Darnold was starring at USC. There was a little bit of overlap between the two in 2015 and 2016 when Darnold took over that USC quarterback position. They developed a connection. Then they developed a true friendship with Carolina later in the NFL. And now, I led this off by saying it's like deja vu for Christian McCaffrey. He welcomed Sam Darnold to his team in Carolina in 2021 because Darnold came over from the New York Jets. And now Christian McCaffrey is welcoming Sam Darnold again. Lucas, they were at the Warriors game together the other day. So these two guys get along, and there's a real chance that 49ers offensive engine is going to be Sam Darnold and Christian McCaffrey. I'm not saying it's a likely chance that Darnold starts, but it's a possible one, right? With the 49ers having 3 quarterbacks right now on the roster and their top option in Brock Purdy not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we saw last year with the 49ers going through four quarterbacks plus some emergency options, including McCaffrey late in that NFC Championship
Yeah.
game. But I think that it's awesome to see the two of them going to the Warriors game together. I remember during last year's season, especially during the later parts of the season into the playoffs, we'd see guys at the games together. I remember it was Kittle, Garoppolo. I think McCaffrey might have been there as well. A couple other guys.
It was the
Uh,
one where the cheerleaders only paid attention to Garoppolo, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that went viral.
And so I think that obviously connecting to the other Bay Area sports teams is great for these guys, especially guys who are new to the Bay Area. And we see it across different sports. We'll see Giants guys at Warriors games and Warriors guys at Giants games. Um, and I think that it's important that all these quarterbacks are making relationships in this locker room because I think there's a pretty good chance that we may see all three of Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, and Brock Purdy playing roles on this 49ers team in 2023.
I think that's certainly what the 49ers actually expect. And, maybe it's a little bit of PTSD from what happened last season, but a lot of fans still can't get their heads around this. I don't know what's so complicated to understand. This team has gone through quarterbacks at a historically high rate due to injuries, and they just feel that they need more of them. I think that there's just this embedded notion amongst, football people, even football fandom throughout the decades, right? That's just deeply etched in there that, if you have more than one quarterback, you don't actually have any kind of thing. And
Yeah.
for the 49ers, the opposite was the truth last year, right? If they didn't have three quality starters, or at least, we didn't get to see Trey Lance enough, I guess, to say, okay, this is a quality starter, but they certainly hope that he develops into that. But Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy both played really well. If they didn't have both of those guys, they don't make it all the way to the NFC Championship game last year. So having multiple quarterbacks ended up being this team's saving grace, and then not having the requisite amount of quarterbacks toward the end of the season at the very end, and then NFC Championship game ended up being what derailed them. As you said, Christian McCaffrey had to throw. So, what's really interesting to me is that when we saw this kind of shift start in 2021 after the 49ers dealt with so many injury issues for Jimmy Garoppolo, they drafted Trey Lance. They kept Jimmy on the team. And that offseason, Kyle Shanahan started talking about the QB position as if it were the running back room. He even said, I see it the same way as the running back room or the wide receiver room. It's the most important position. It's even more important than those two. So you better not run out of bodies, just like you better not run out of bodies at running back, and you better not run out of bodies at wide receiver. And a lot of people had trouble, kind of getting their heads around the fact that both Garoppolo and Lance would make the team, and they would need both throughout the course of the season. And we've just seen that same philosophy, become more entrenched with the 49ers right here moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, success is a Super Bowl title, especially for the 49ers who have invested so much draft capital and built such a complete roster. But if you look at it more holistically, 3 out of the last 4 years have been somewhat successful seasons. And in 2019, we saw Garoppolo playing through some pretty serious injuries in towards the later half of that year, and we were a fourth quarter away from winning a Super Bowl. 2020, we didn't have anyone behind Garoppolo. And that was, obviously there were a lot of other injuries and issues with that team, but you can't win. You can't be a winning team without a quarterback, and a quarterback that can be successful. And 2021 and 2022, in 2021, we used Lance and Garoppolo to varying effectiveness. But especially last year, the fact that we had three quarterbacks was the reason we got to the NFC Championship game, and the fact that we didn't have four was part of the reason that we didn't make it to the last game of the season.
Go back historically, I know before your time, and probably before mine too. I was only 3 years old at the time, but the 91 49ers had Joe Montana, but he didn't play that year, coming off an offseason injury. Steve Young, he did play that year, but he got hurt about 2/3 of the way through. Steve Bono played really well, led the 49ers to a 5-1 record. Before Steve Young was able to come back at the end of the season, that team was 10-6. They became the first 10-6 team to ever miss the playoffs, so people don't talk about them, but it was a good football team that had to go through three quality rostered quarterbacks to get to where they were. So the 49ers almost originally were the team of superlative QB depth, right? You always talk about Young and Montana, but it was Young, Montana, and Bono. Elvis Gerback started a lot of games in the mid 1990s when Steve Young was hurt. And then obviously moving forward a little bit further into your era, you had the whole Alex Smith, Colin Kaepernick debate. Now it was Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and now we move into the Sam Darnold era of the debate. Purdy, Lance, Sam Darnold. You talk about trade rumors. Well, I think that John Lynch addressed them the only way that he could. Of course, everybody, except for Nick Bosa, of course, that's a non-starter. Everybody has a price. Trey Lance has been the subject of some inquiries from other teams, but at this point, to me, I kind of, Lucas, I look at it this way. I think that Lance and somebody like Brandon Ayuk, who's also been subject of some of these rumors, just more valuable to the 49ers now than any other team, right? The 49ers will always be open for business. They'll say, hey, if your price is high enough, yeah, we'll ship him out. But John Lynch made it a point to say, we're trying to do something special now in 2023. And most of the time when you trade somebody, you might get a pick, you might get 2 picks in return. Does that automatically make you better right now? Probably not, right? So I think that the 49ers are looking at this in a short-term win-now window. They want to make this roster as sustainable as possible for the long term, but this is a Super Bowl caliber roster as it is, and to stay that way, they need quarterback depth, as we just talked about. And in Ayuk's case, they need a top X wide receiver, and that's what he was in 2022.
Yeah, I think with Ayuk, it's been a cool story. Obviously, he had that successful rookie year with, I mean, really without Debo consistently that year and without Kittle consistently that year. A lot of times he was the guy, and then he had some early season struggles in the last couple of years, and there were questions about if he had Shanahan's trust and if he had the team's trust and how he would bounce back. And we've really seen him become a key part of the roster and make key plays down the stretch, especially last season. And I'm excited to see what he does in 2023. And as a fan, I hope he doesn't get traded because of what he offers us to kind of complement Debo and Kittle while being physical, but offering a different level or a different ability to put strain on the defense in different ways.
There you see Matt Barrow's article. This was written after John Lynch's media availability yesterday. Trade Brandon Ayuk. John Lynch says the wide receiver is a big part of the 49ers 2023 plans. The plans, by the way, for the 49ers, I mean, I've written a lot about this. I think that they have a very, crystallized roster building strategy, and that is to select either through the draft or sometimes free agency, but select talent that they develop into whatever that talent may develop into. They're obviously shooting for the ceiling there, shooting for the stars. And if they can develop players into A-list talent, they're willing to pay them. They pay their A-listers, they let their B-listers walk, and then they try to replenish that B-list pool with draft capital. And they have 11 picks coming up in this draft in just a few days. On Thursday, that's when it begins, but the 49ers do not select or aren't slated to select until Friday. That's how they stay under the salary cap. The determination right now that they need to make is, will Brandon Ayuk be part of that A-list core? Well, he's coming off a 1,000-yard receiving season. I think if he puts another one up on the board, they're going to pay him. He's going to be an A-lister. At that X wide receiver position, so important in Kyle Shanahan's offense. You saw what he did with Julio Jones in Atlanta in 2016. You get a guy who's a perennial 1,000-yard target. You find a way to fit him under the salary cap, which, by the way, is growing every single season. But, we touched on it a little bit earlier, Lucas. Warriors-Kings. I mean, you were talking about the fact that you have a lot of 49ers players going to Warriors games and supporting the local Bay Area teams. It makes for kind of a cool camaraderie within the metro area. But, I mean, this is even more unique, this whole dynamic that we're seeing in the NBA right now, because the 49ers have players who are from Sacramento, namely Eric Armstead, who like the Kings. He was talking about it yesterday. And on a broader sense, this is like the 49ers fan base subdivided, right? 49ers are the only football team now left, the NFL team in Northern California. I think the Sacramento's not in the Bay Area, but it's firmly within 49ers territory. So you have a lot of Kings / 49ers fans, kind of like you have a lot of 49ers / Warriors fans. And you're seeing the fan base care a lot about basketball just because there's a lot of energy in this rivalry. I'm going to be headed tomorrow night to Game 5. It's going to be fun at Golden One Center. I love that venue. Cool spot in Sacramento. But what a treat this has been, right? I think maybe you and I are more baseball, football guys, but whenever basketball hits the playoffs, especially Northern California style, it could be fun.
Yeah, I mean, and you touched on a little bit with the Niners being the only team left in the Bay Area. Soon, it looks like the Giants are going to be the only baseball team left in the Bay Area. And while it's not necessarily Bay Area, Warriors Kings is going to be likely the local rivalry. And I think local rivalries are great for sports. I have cousins that are Kings fans, and seeing this play out in such a really enthralling series so far has been awesome for the Northern California area. And I think really, I mean, Fox, the news came out last night. He has an avulsion fracture in his left index finger. Sorry. He's doubtful for Game 5. He may try to gut it out, knowing who he is as a clutch player, obviously winning that award this year, and even going back to his days at Kentucky. My guess is he's going to try to play. He's going to try to be there, but you got to wonder about how effective he's going to be, how he's going to be able to shoot the ball, how he's going to be able to deal with the physicality that is playoff basketball. And I think that Game 5 is going to be whoever wins Game 5 is going to win the series.
Yeah, it's the pivotal game. It is
Yeah,
the pivotal game. I thought last night was the pivotal game in Lakers Memphis. I thought that if Memphis won, it would have been 2-2. They would have had two of the final three at home. The Lakers obviously win. They're 3-1 now ahead of the Grizzlies, and they're in a position to close out that series. So Game 4 was the pivotal one of that series. I think Game 5 is the pivotal one of this series. The Warriors have to find a way to steal one on the road, right? There's no way to win this series without doing that, given the fact that Sacramento has home court advantage. And it looked like they needed just a little bit more of an edge after games 1 and 2 to be able to get that done. And maybe this De'Aaron Fox injury is what gives them that edge.
yeah, and even going beyond the Fox injury, you mentioned the Lakers Grizzlies series, and obviously Dylan Brooks poked the bear. That is LeBron James with his comments about LeBron's age and not being able to do it anymore. We've seen LeBron James. I mean, he put up I think 22 points, 20 rebounds, and 7 assists.
2020, yeah, that was crazy.
Yesterday. Which I mean, yes, his game has changed as he's gotten older, but he's still one of the greats in this league today. And I think that in a different way, I think the Kings may have poked the Warriors. The Warriors are the defending champions. They've won 4 out of the last 8. And I think the Kings are going to be a top team for the next 10 years, probably more so than the Grizzlies. Just I think they're built more sustainably than the Grizzlies and with more pieces and a more cohesive group on the court than the Grizzlies. But in Game 1, I mean, Andrew Wiggins missed that shot that, I mean, could have given the Warriors a 1-0 advantage, really changes the series. Game 2, Draymond gets ejected, and you saw in Game 3, the Warriors responded. Game 3 was their best game of the series. Game 4, they needed Harrison Barnes to miss that shot at the end. You heard Steph Curry say after Game 3, yeah, Draymond's got a history, but so do the Warriors. And I think we're seeing that play out right now. And it's just going to be a tale of, will the history and the know-how of the aging, yes, Warriors, but still great Warriors, be able to overcome the youth and the exuberance of these Kings? I think you also kind of see it in the fan bases. You got the Golden One Center lighting the beam. Although I'm not a Kings fan, I got to say it's a pretty cool tradition. And they have a raucous and energetic home environment. And it's going to be very interesting to see how the Warriors, who haven't been good on the road this year, are able to deal with that tomorrow night.
It's going to be awesome. A lot of 49ers fans will be in the building, and they're probably not going to be rooting for the same outcome in that building. I'm going to go check it out, though. I'll be there. I will be watching some good basketball in a really cool venue. Anyway, Lucas, this was awesome. This was his first time on a YouTube show. We've been talking about doing this for a while. Lucas, a good family friend, and he's going to be headed to Georgetown next year. We're going to be doing some more of this, I hope, if you want to come back, Lucas, in the near future. You always have such great thoughts. I always enjoy dinners. We're just sitting down, chopping it up, and it's been a blast having you on.